Yeah, so
Good morning to one and all. I wholeheartedly welcome all the participants to the second day of International Conference on Behavioral Nudges for Public Policies in India, Opportunities and Criticism, organized by Department of Commerce, University of Kerala. Yesterday, there were two technical sessions in which the keynote speakers were Dr. Anirudh Tagat and Dr. Savita Kulkarni, moderated by Professor Gabriel Simon Tattil and Dr. Manju S. Nair. So it is time to move on to the third technical session of the International Conference on Behavioral Nudges for Public Policies in India, Opportunities and Criticism. The theme of today's technical session is Kerala's Electoral Victory 2021, a behavioral nudging approach. In this session, we have with us Dr. P.K. Sujathan as the speaker of the session. Dr. Sujathan P.K. is currently working as the assistant professor in economics at KKTM Government College, Pullu, Kodingallu, Thrissur. After serving at Kerala State Planning Board for 7 years, he shifted his career to teaching and research at collegiate education. He acquired his PhD in economics from Dr. John Mathai Center, University of Calicut. His major areas of interest include behavioral economics, happiness economics, labor economics, and tribal economics. It is a great pleasure to welcome such a noted personality as the speaker of today's session. So, on behalf of one and all present here, I extend warm welcome to Sujathan sir to the conference. And next, with great pleasure, let me welcome the most eminent and talented personality, a faculty from our own institution, Dr. Arun Kumar K, as the moderator of today's session. Dr. Arun Kumar K serves as the Assistant Professor of the Department of Political Science at the University of Kerala. He previously showcased his academic abilities at NSS College, Ottapalam, and Government Victoria College, Palakkad. He has numerous papers and academic contributions to his credit. He also served as the member of the Board of Studies of Calicut University. He was conferred with Young Social Scientist Award by the University of Mauritius in the year 2010. Above all, he is an active public speaker and expresses his deliberations and opinion on social and public affairs. He also served as the Associate Executive Editor of 24 News Channel. We are extremely happy to have you here today as the moderator of session, sir. Once again, on behalf of the Department of Commerce, University of Kerala, I extend a warm welcome to all. Now, I welcome Arun Kumar sir to moderate today's session. Over to you, sir.
so you are muted, I think. So you are muted.
Yeah. Thank you, Surya, and good morning to all once again. It's always a pleasure for me to interact with the scholars from economics and commerce. But in our college days, we used to say we have to take a special precaution while making intellectual deliberations with these two communities, because our normatively defined political theories will crumble upon their statistical validations in most of the time. It was a long debate since our behavioral revolution started in political science and other disciplines in 1950s. So the behavioral economics or the econometrics and the commerce people always pose a threat to us in the form of their statistical validations and their operationalization from ground. But in Indian context, we used to say flag follows trade is not only applicable in colonialism, it is applicable in our intellectual deliberations. Flag comes first, and the trade comes first, and the flag follows. The politics follows commerce in a way. Anyway, this theory is in a way the nudging theory in behavioralism again poses a threat to the political theorists who traditionally define political process, electoral verdict, popular choices, etc., etc. But anyway, I'm very much thankful to Dr. Biju and the Commerce Department for giving me such an opportunity to interact with such a vibrant, stimulating, inspiring, and of course challenging area of nudging theory. I will just tell you some experiences from on ground as a journalist since I supervised the entire process, or I viewed the entire process of election from our newsroom in 24 channel. See, one of the best analysis, something similar to our nudging theory, or the application of nudging theory happened when the election was in the progress. O Rajagopal, the BJP state leader, was interviewed by television channels. And O Rajagopal unexpectedly made a statement that, in fact, I now consider as, without understanding the nudging theory, he applied it in the analysis of Kerala politics and the electoral scenario. He said, while the media, opposition, and all the opposition ruling class, not political ruling class, all of the people, UDF, BJP, everybody running behind the gold smuggling case, Swapna Suresh, Shivashankar, Life Mission, Sprinkler. But at the same time, the chief minister and the ruling dispensation is running after. They were, in fact, heavily contributing to the people's needs in a way. So they were busy in distributing resources, life kits, and the life mission, the flats, and other welfare measures. They were indulged in the process of distributing justice in a way. So if I quote Richard Thaler in the Indian context, I will just modify Richard Thaler like this: putting the kit at eye level counts as nudge in a way. I will just modify the traditional definition of Richard Thaler and cast some strength. Putting the kit at eye level counts as nudge. Banning Coca-Cola doesn't, in a way. Traditionally, if you criticize Communist Party, most of the time Communist Party or the CPIM was criticized on their stand towards globalized product, especially computer or Coca-Cola, something else. And I will still modify this Richard Thaler in the in Kerala context like this: putting the kit at eye level counts as nudge. Banning the access to public distribution on account of Aadhaar does not. So the second thing that happened with respect, I think most of you remember what happened in a girl, Jharkhand, when her parents were not permitted to access to public distribution system on account of they don't have an Aadhaar card. So that was a negative sanction. In a way, in political science theory, especially in democracy and in psephology or in election studies, this nudging is going to be an important variable. Nudging is going to be a new variable in a way, though it has been manifested in different theoretical format. For example, John Rawls writes about theory of justice. That means your inequality is justified when it serves the common man. That kind of a theory is there with John Rawls. So justice as fairness. If a political dispensation catches this or performs this justiciable delivery, then of course they will catch the imagination of voter. That was one of the articulation of John Rawls in a way. And another principle, Isaiah Berlin, another political scientist, comes with positive liberty. Or if the state intervenes for expanding the capability of individual, that is considered as a positive liberty. That is an aspect of positive liberty. So this nudging theory, I think, is a continuation of all these theories in a different format, sometimes disagreeing with the rational choice theory in political science and in economics as well. So this what O Rajagopal articulated was a popular notion of the application of nudging theory as far as Kerala electoral scenario is concerned. A positive reinforcement to deliver much rather than negative sanction. A positive reinforcement, but my question is whether the positive reinforcement is always possible. Suppose if there is no natural calamity like this, flood, how can the state and the ruling dispensation perform this function? Or if the pandemic is not there, how can some of the features of this nudging theory be carried out by the ruling LDF ministry? Remember, in 2008, when this nudging theory came, at that time, Kerala was ruled by V.S. Sujathan. We were almost certain that V.S. Sujathan will get a second term. But what happened in 2011? V.S. Sujathan was ousted from power because of some other thing. So rather than some of the welfare measures adopted by that time, too, some of the welfare measures were there. But if I apply this nudging theory, most of the time, V.S. Sujathan was involved in the process of criticizing at the same time the government structure. That means he is becoming an opposition from the ruling front. So more focusing upon negative sanctions rather than the positive reinforcement. So the factions, in fact, put V.S. Sujathan in trouble in 2011. But when you come to 2016 or 2021 scenario, things are different. The positive sanction, this theory to an extent was applied by Modi government as well. Why Modi government won? Ujjwal Yojana, in fact, helped Modi to overcome all the kind of dissent they had, rather than their political nationalist rhetorics. They could appeal, they could capture the imagination of the common voter by providing gas, by providing Jannati, even though there were large impacts of demonetization, which is another case of negative sanction, but they could reach to the people in a way by providing measures. So in a way, that in fact worked out well. That resulted, that culminated in the electoral victory of Narendra Modi at the center, and to an extent in Kerala. And one more point, I will just conclude and invite P.K. Sujathan. As far as the opposition is concerned, again, the nudging theory is applicable. And I know most of the UDF leaders and the BJP leaders came and categorically said that if they are voted to power, they will do away with the life mission. They will throw life mission project away. This is a form of negative sanction. But that government or that opposition, which did not have much to promise to the people, was voted out. And even in their manifesto, they included some of the positive reinforcement, but they were seen and felt as the agencies or agents of negative sanction. So the voters who will receive those agents who are involved in the process of positive reinforcement rather than indulging in the negative sanctions. I learned from this article and this nudging theory from this. And again, I will quote this Richard Tallinn in Kerala context once again, and I will wind up. Putting the kit at eye level counts as nudge. Banning Coca-Cola doesn't. This is applicable to opposition as well. Putting the kit or the minimum income guarantee scheme counts as nudge, and banning life mission project count does not. That will be a kind of a different articulation of this theory in Kerala context. With these words, I will invite P.K. Sujathan, my friend. We were colleagues along with Prasad. We taught in Government Victoria College, Palakkad. And I'm very happy to see Sujathan back here, not only in this platform, in the Village Journal as well. And it's and you should be, and really it's appreciating that. And I'm very happy to see that your article is published with that kind of a fine treatment of this concept. Anyway, I welcome you, P.K. Sujathan, to this international conference on nudging theory. And this is your time. I take the stage. And after this talk, I think we will have some serious deliberations. Thank you, and welcome P.K. Sujathan to this conference. You can start.
1 minute. Good morning, all.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Please unmute
I think
yourself.
the role of psychology, emotional and social factors influence human behavior and economic decision making, because the precedent so far was that a man is always economic in nature. There is no need of taking into account his emotions, feelings, and personality traits. But actually, this is a behavioral economics stands aloof from other branches in the sense that it takes into account the role of psychology. In what way psychology influences the behavior of a human being? What are the other social factors? Or is a human being always an economic man or an economic woman? What about non-economic factors? So all these influence, all these play a very pivotal role in the decision making of individuals. Of course, origin to a theory made by Herbert Simon is bounded rationality theory. Bounded rationality theory says that the rationality of human being is limited. So far the perception was it was unlimited, but actually it is limited. That means that it is not the economic factor per se alone or per se that is responsible for making the decision of the individuals. Instead, non-economic factors also play a very decisive role that we shall see later. So that is what is behavioral economics talks about. Then we have in what way there is a how nudging has turned up under this behavioral economics paradigm. It is actually this principle of behavioral economics as a tool. The tool is called nudging. And what is the advantage of nudging? Nudging enables individuals to have better choices. So what is nudging? It says that trivial actions, silly actions, small actions of people shall have a very serious impact with regard to their behavioral change. You know, as I did tell you already, people are not supposed to behave rationally around the clock. There are some insignificant actions of the people that happen so spontaneously, but that is having a very atomic impact on the manner in which we behave. That's that. Of course, seem to be unnoticeable, but gradually that has a very serious impact upon his decisions. So it was popularized by the Nobel Prize laureate, Thaler. He was awarded Nobel Prize in Economics in 2017 for it. And Sunstein was not awarded a Nobel Prize, but he was awarded a very prestigious prize by the French government. But this theory was jointly coined by Richard Thaler, American economist, and Sunstein, who is a political scholar in United States. So nudge is an amicable, a friendly policy push that enable people to have their own decisions, right? Their own decisions. You know, people are either producers or consumers, and if you just analyze them from the point of consumers, you know that variety is the cream of life of each and every individual. Since we are thrown open to varieties in and around us, the very fact that we are able to think logically always is somewhat illogical, because we cannot have a decision making that is always perfect. That's not possible. It is because we individuals are not living alone. We belong to a society. We are influenced by a host of factors. We have to be the part and parcel of the society in which others are also living. We are not solo, right? We are not solo. We don't belong to a uninhabitable desert. Instead, we are in a society. Naturally, we are encircled. We are surrounded by a lot of information that is exactly not at all reliable. That is exactly not at all complete, or that is somewhat unreliable, that is somewhat unrealistic, that is somewhat incomplete. So we are influenced by such environment where the information we have at our fingertip is of course asymmetric in nature. That is of course incomplete in nature. And behavioral economics also says what maybe a day will come where human beings will be forced to depend too much on robots in a post-human world in future. Of course, that's a far cry as far as today is concerned. But behavioral economics says people are not at all weird. People are not at all superhuman, right? If you find some object in Mars, if you find some object in Jupiter, of course, that's a word. But here, human beings on earth are not weird. And we are not robots. We are not inflexible robots. We are not automatic machines. But we are social animals with a lot of emotion, with a fleet of emotions, right? And that emotions are subject to drastic changes. And the fact that we are influenced by the emotions and the surroundings in which we are living, of course, it is but natural that our choices are inconsistent. And there's every possibility of having a behavioral bias. There is no guarantee that whatever decisions we arrive at are absolutely correct. Whatever decisions we have, whatever consequences we have out of our decisions are always rational. No, that's not possible because we are social animals. That's what Richard Thaler pointed out. That's why his ideas became revolutionary and caught the attention of the luminaries. And that's why he was awarded Nobel Prize for his exceptional theory. It has been unheard of so far because the perception brewing so far was that economics is something that stands different and distinct from the rest of the branches. It has to be viewed separately. Man is always rational. Human being always think is economic. There is an economic man in him that makes judicious decisions, and that decisions always stand in good stead. No, of course, such an idea was turned down by Richard Thaler, and that's why he won the Pride of Place. Okay, so Thaler himself pointed out. See how beautiful beautifully pointed out. See, putting a fruit at eye level counts as a nudge. Banning junk food doesn't. Right. That itself communicates what nudging is. Right. Putting the fruit at eye level. That's more. That's nudging. Right. Suppose the government is passionately interested in what's having a healthy people, healthy demographic dividends. It's not incumbent upon the government to ban junk food altogether. Instead, it is up to the government to incentivize people towards a healthy living, and not by banning junk food, but by encouraging people to have salubrious and health-giving food. And that must be brought to the notice of the people by putting it at eye level. That means it is incumbent upon the government to have access to such health-giving foods with the people. Banning junk food will not provide any durable solution to the aim of the government. So what's more important is to put the food within the eye shot rather than banning the junk food. Again pointed out, during 40s, the economics became very much mathematical. Economics, a lot of rigors and horrors of mathematical modeling, right? Because Thaler says we were not smart to write down the models of real behavior. That's what is pointed out. Because economics were fantasizing a lot of assumptions, and that was portrayed with the help of incomprehensible models that somehow became beyond the reach of the common people because economists didn't take into account the real human behavior. And the real human behavior, according to Thaler, we're thinking about rational human behavior. But the major handicap associated with a rational human being is that, of course, thinking was fine-tuned in a rational way, bypassing the very sentiments, feelings, emotions, expectations, and idiosyncrasies of humans. The feelings and emotions of humans are of far-reaching importance in having crucial decisions rather than hankering after the so-called model building, hankering after rational expectations, etc. So it is but natural to have errors in humans being decisions. So so-called model building, the so-called rational thinking have their own shortcomings. So what's more important is the emotions of the people that determines decisions, right? Now let us skip over some theoretical underpinning because there is a contribution of every theory. So I shall just skip over it. I shall make a hasty look at it. Begin with the Nobel laureate Thaler. They put libertarian paternalism at the heart of the nudge theory that was discussed the last day, right? It says that nudging speaks beyond economics, and it is a political projection also, because libertarian paternalism says that uh, it is high time to respect the autonomy of the people. We have to respect the independence and autonomy of the people. So it is the next theory is grounded in that libertarian paternalism. And so there is no room for compulsions. That is what this paternalist theory says, right? And from the point of view of institutional economics, that is a torchbearer, and that is a guiding principle for policy makers to realize that it is the institutions that influence the preferences of the people. That was told by Bowles in 1998. Then Ubel and Launstein says that nudging is a mode that is politically expedient, that allows policymakers to have more effective solutions that has its roots in traditional economics. Haller and Sunstein again pointed out that freedom to choose was the biggest advantage of the people, because there is both good nudging and evil nudging, right? Haller says that evil nudging is more dangerous, and unfortunately that is found in public sector rather than in private sector. That is what he says. So what to choose and what not to choose, that is more important. We human beings, as you already pointed out, we are more irrational and less rational. So we are influenced by the surroundings and environments. So we are at liberty to have our own economic decisions. Of course, that is influenced, and it's not compelled. That's the point. That is influenced by the society, but that's not at all coerced. That's not at all compelled. There is no room for micromanagement, right? You are not supposed to micromanage me, and vice versa. Micromanagement will always bring about evil nudging, because micromanagement doesn't have any room for come back. So we have just seen what is behavioral economics. We have just seen what is nudging. What Thaler's had a brief sketch on a few theories on it. Now let us come to Kerala context. How far it was applied in Kerala context like that. Okay. The election that held in Kerala on 6th April, I would say that was not at all an acid test. That was not at all a fierce battle between the LDF and the UDF. LDF could come out with a comprehensive victory, rewriting the history of 4 decades with a mammoth 99 seats. And no government was re-elected in Kerala since the year 1977. That means it was after 1977. It was, before 1977, it is only in 2020 that the same government was re-elected in Kerala. So what I would like to see right from the very scratch, right from the very beginning, I would like to bring to your notice that I'm not a politician. Instead, I'm a budding academician. So I'm not interested in talking about the political overtones of the electoral victory of the LDF government. Instead, I would like to focus on what is the role of behavioral economics, what is the role of nudging behind the electoral victory of the LDF government. So I would like to focus on the political economy framework of nudging paradigm. So far as the electoral victory of Kerala is concerned. So what I would like to thrust on the fact that somehow the principles of, there are 6 principles of behavioral nudging that have been so instrumental in influencing the electoral victory in Kerala. Let us begin with one by one. Regarding the methodology, let me skip over. It is a qualitative naturalistic observation method. Of course, it is non-experimental in nature. We made some observations. We had a serious discussion with the VIPs of the field of politics. We had some discussion with the policy makers. We had some discussion with those who have been very much active in politics. And based on our intellectual discussions, we could jump into a conclusion that policy of nudging played a very vigorous role in influencing the electoral mandate in Kerala. Let us begin with the strategic role played by community health workers regarding this. See, there was a technique basis behavioral change communication that was employed by government of Kerala, and that basis door-to-door campaign by health workers. The door-to-door campaign inspiration people to stay indoors, because during the pandemic we were not supposed to run about, and so we were supposed to keep ourselves indoors, and that was spontaneously, the necessity of keeping ourselves indoors was spontaneously injected in the minds of the people by community health workers. That guaranteed a kind of information hygiene among people, because people genuinely felt that whatever information being transmitted to them was absolutely right. That was for protecting their health rather than hankering after the invectives of the other people, right? Kerala Highway Police, the role played by Kerala Highway Police, the supply of life-saving medicines to critical patients by the Kerala Highway Police and the 24/7 distress helpline, that again helped citizens, that again nudged people to self-protection mechanism. Okay, because there was we have been in a compulsory and mandatory mood for protecting ourselves. And that was not coerced, that was not what injected unscrupulously by the government. Instead, it was nudged by the people, by the government, thanks to a series of initiatives like Kerala Highway Police and the advertisement tactics by the government. Okay. So there were, road accident victims, So arrangements were made to provide free treatment to road accident people during the first 48 hours, both in government and private hospitals. Okay. So many measures were taken by the government. So all these were citizen-friendly measures, right? There was, as I did tell you already, there was no micromanagement at all. And there was electronic network of ambulances to ensure instant trauma care to road accident victims. Okay, the victims were not bleeding to death. Instead, they were immediately taken care of by the e-network of ambulances, highway police, like that. Okay. And there was a Save Our Fellow Travelers, maybe you must have heard about it, that provided immediate medical assistance for the accident victims, right? Hospitals. Now, suppose a bleeding victim was taken to the hospital. Hospitals were allowed, even before filing an FIR, the patient has to be treated on warfarin. Right? even before identifying the family of the victim, even for lodging the earlier, there were a lot of procedural formalities, and that was the reason why the victims were bleeding to death on the road itself, because people were very much reluctant of taking the victim to hospital, because a lot of the procedure was eased and rationalized by the government in such a way that it is the victim that's more important rather than the procedures and formalities. Of course, that nudged with the common people to take the victim to the hospital all on a sudden. And another important thing, the helper was issued appreciation certificate. Okay, that is of course what a classic example of nudging. Right, classic example of nudging. Appreciation certificate was given to the helper or a group of helpers who took the victim to the hospital to save his life. So there was a kind of camaraderie, there was a kind of friendship, we feeling, and empathy, rather not sympathy, right? It's empathy that was nudged in the minds of the people. So that was mainly because of the exemplary initiative taken by the the government of Kerala. So government, it was felt that government was walking the talk. The government was fulfilling the promise, walking the talk. So now let us come to the case of water bills, right? No, the water bill in schools 3 times a day. It was introduced in 2008. It was a very far-reaching step because students in schools, no matter it is in self-financing or government aided, they should always remain hydrated. They should not remain dehydrated. Okay, so there was a health-giving impact on the people, because the advantage of water bill is that the students will always remain hydrated, not only when they are at school but when they are back home also. Yeah, so that is a positive impact. That is the health-giving, salutary impact of water bills. There is no room for dehydration at all. For a student who is both at school and at home, feel good, or that spontaneously the students spontaneously felt the necessity of keeping themselves hydrated. Liquor policy, another important thing, there is a very practical, down-to-earth initiative taken by the government, because there is fruitful marriage between the tourism sector and the liquor policy of the hotel industry and the tourism sector, because it is inextricably mixed up with each other, right? That not only helped increase the state revenue, but put an end to the the death out of consuming liquor, right? So the legal drinking age was increased from 21 to 23. Then, very important point, government did not favor prohibition. That's important. Government did not favor prohibition, but government injected voluntary abstinence. That's important. See, that's why you have to read it in line with what Thaler pointed out. Putting the fruit at eye level counts as nuts. Banning junk food doesn't. So here, what government did, instead of banning liquor, government nudged voluntary abstinence. And that voluntary abstinence was made possible through advertisements in social media. So rather than prioritizing, or rather than taking hard and bold efforts and steps to put an end to the consumption of liquor, government deliberately resorted to citizen-friendly initiatives, speaking in behavioral economics paradigm, nudging technique. That provided a kind of that instilled the necessity of keeping themselves away from a constantly consuming liquor. Okay. So now let us come to the health department of Kerala. Mr. Read about the animation ad, Covishield and Covaxin, dancing into Rasputin by two medical students of government college, government medical college, Thrissur and Janaki Omkumar and Naveen, right, two students. Okay. So that was a very deliberate attempt initiated by the government to inject a kind of feeling among the people regarding vaccination drive. Clear. Government was not interested in putting behind the bars such individuals who are yet to get vaccinated. Government did not imprison unvaccinated people. Instead, government resorted to such animation ads. So that was very comic. At the same time, it sent a message to the people regarding mandatory vaccination. And the daily press conference, at that time, there was a press conference at 6 p.m. every day by the Kerala Chief Minister that had a very holistic impact upon the people. Actually, people were thronging before social media to give heed to the video conference of the Chief Minister of the state. And that is a very good example of good governance, right? Very good example of good governance. And people who are, as I did tell you, people who are listening to the social media. So that does imply that their faith in government was not lost. People still did have faith in government. That, of course, manifested themselves in investing their mandate once again in the same LDF ministry. Right. Now let us state the case of migrant workers. We can't even dream of the growth and development of our state without the contribution of the immigrants or migrant workers, and they were, taken in their emotions and sentiments were respected by the government, and the instructions were distributed, the brochures were distributed in their own language, vernacular language. They didn't have to have any assistance from anybody for translation. Instead, it was distributed in their own language. They felt the imperative necessity of keeping themselves indoors and keeping themselves hydrated rather than whiling away here and there. Even the menu, the menu at the camp that was also to suit their home cousins. That means the menu that they used to have when they were back home, the same menu was served even at relief centers also. And the very statement of the Chief Minister at the daily press conference at 6 p.m. as I did tell you, migrant workers, they are the cornerstone. They are the water move. They are the pillars of the economy of Kerala, and they would be supported, whatever be the circumstances. That made them confident, and that made them relax. So government was able to take into account the sentiments and expectations of the migrant people. There was no discrimination between the the Keralites and the migrant workers, right? Now let's take up the case of salary challenge. We are supposed to pay, government servants were supposed to pay 1 month's salary in installments. But at the same time, there was an option called opt-out. Of course, that is a part of the 6 principles of behavioral nudging. That's very interesting, right? Opting out, that we'll see later, right? I have made a tabular presentation. Opting out, because there was no, as I did tell you, there was no coercion at all. And the government would pay back the salary in installments with interest, right? And they have the option. If the government is supposed to repay the salary with interest later, the government servants can opt out if interested. Okay. So the promise of the government, the salary that was taken away with one hand would be repaid with another hand with interest later. That is very similar to the benefit theory principle of taxation under public finance. So that nudged people, that means encourage, right? That encouraged people to donate at least one or two installments to CMDRF. So there was no coercion at all, but somehow most of the government servants voluntarily donated the one installment or two installments to CMDRF, taking into account the gruesome and acute critical health and fiscal scenario of the state. The same was also replicated in 2018 when flood hit here. Kerala again warmed up the idea of contributing towards CMDRF, right? Now let us see what the the VIP, the luminaries of the personalities, the renowned personalities of the filmdom. In what way their words, their appearances, their voice sayings, their charisma influenced or their charisma nudged the Keralites. Suresh Gopi, the actor, was ambassador of KSL SA, and also he was ambassador of Energy Smart School project. Actor Dilip was ambassador of Atulyam Saksharata program. Mammootty was the goodwill ambassador of Akshaya project and Maitri challenge. Actress Manchu Warrior was the ambassador of Kerala State Literacy Mission and Kudumbashree organic farming project. So this is the best of the behavioral trump cards that a state can have, because they are the celebrities from the movies. They are the most charismatic personalities for the people to emulate, because they are the people who are easily people their personalities can always exert influence of the weak airlines. So government made use of the services of these celebrities of filmdom to nudge people, right? For instance, Manju Mayur was the brand ambassador of Kudumbashree organic farming project that somehow injected a feeling among Keralites to have the pressing necessity of organic vegetables rather than being a supplicant for the neighboring states. And very recently, government came out with a minimum support price for vegetables. Of course, that is in tune with the organic farming project. Now let us see, I have told you there are 6 principles of behavioral nudging postulated by Richard Thaler, and in what way they did find an application in Kerala context. So we have to put them and put together, right? So we shall see what are the principles. We shall see what is meant by each and every principle and what is its application in Kerala context. First comes leveraging default rules. That means to leverage means to make use of the default rules. As I've told you, there is opt-in option and opt-out option. Opt-in option is what? Free vaccination. Opt-out option is not interested. If you are not interested in being vaccinated, government is not going to put you behind the bars, but government will nudge you regarding the burning necessity of being vaccinated. And if you're not interested in getting vaccinated at the public health center, you may even go on to private hospital on payment. Okay, that was not banned. So there is no room for banning. There is no room for prohibition of being vaccinated in private sector. So there is no discrimination between public sector and private sector. That is the leverage, making use of the default rule, opt-in option and opt-out option. Whatever it may be, suppose the citizen feels that it is had better get vaccinated in a private hospital rather than a government hospital or community health center or primary health center, of course, he or she is at liberty to have it, provided he feels or she feels that maximizes his or her welfare, of course. So that is default, leveraging default rules. Second principle is make it easy to choose. Freedom to choose. Selection becomes easy. Selection becomes easier if and only if procedural formalities, administrative wrangles have been brought to the minimum. If it's not brought to the minimum, it will take the implementation failures, operational inefficiencies will be galore. So that have to be minimized to the core. So for instance, there is a Kerala Micro, Small and Medium Enterprise Facilitation Bill of 2019. Of course, that promoted a kind of ease of doing business because entrepreneurs were allowed to have micro, small and medium enterprises for up to an investment of 10 crore without the prior license of the government. Without the prior license of the government. So that is make it easy to choose. So you just correlate the principle and how far it is applied in Kerala context. Reducing administrative modalities to the minimum. The best and the classic example is this bill passed by the government. If you would like to have investment to 10 crore, there is no need of a prior approval, license of the government. Then we have third one, emphasize social norms. That means creating a socially desirable behavior. I've told you the best example I did tell you to be a part and parcel of salary challenge. There was some kind of coercion in the beginning, but somehow the court intervened. Maybe you read it in the newspaper. And then government made it not mandatory on the part of the people to donate. But that was also an example of evil nudging. I would say that government learned a lesson from a kind of evil nudging that it implied. That's why the judiciary had to intervene. Right. Later, it became if and only it became voluntary. It was not made mandatory, right? So that was a kind of having socially desirable behavior among the people. Fourth principle is disclosing outcome. Disclosing outcome. Disclose the outcome. The outcome is not supposed to be tucked away under the carpet. Instead, it has to be advertised. What advertise? The advantage. The advantage of good governance has to be advertised to the people. Example, I've told you the declining number of COVID hit people in social media. I'm not talking about the Omicron case nowadays. Instead, this happened in 2020, right? So earlier, the government was supposed to, publish data regarding the COVID hit people. Earlier, there was an upsurge in the number of COVID hit people, but gradually it started dwindling one by one. And that dwindling nature of COVID hit people attributed to the success of disciplined communities. So see here, the government what made use of the feelings of the people in such a way that the reason for the decline in the number of COVID hit people was mainly attributed to the fact that the citizens remained disciplined. The citizens became more alive to and aware of the consequences of roaming about outside. So the citizens became very much emboldened by the promise, performance of the government. And that is the reason. So the credit goes to the citizens for a declining number of COVID patients rather than the heroic steps undertaken by the government. So that implies that government was able to take into account the government was able to take into confidence the people. That's a kind of nudging, right? It's of course a kind of nudging. Then fifth, we have reinforcement, the kind of reinforcement that has to be repeated. That means, suppose I did take my first vaccination. Of course, I'm supposed to have my second vaccination. And now we can even have booster dose, right? But after taking the first vaccination, we are usually having a congratulatory message from the government that you are first vaccinated. And you can even have the either the soft copy of the fact that you are vaccinated within a fraction of a second soon after vaccination. That is another advantage. Then once you are due for your second vaccination, just on the eve of your due date for second vaccination, you again receive an SMS from the government that your time is due for getting vaccinated for a second dose. Suppose. No, that is another classic example of nudging, because the police did not come to home to remind people or to take such people into custody just because he or she was not having second dose of vaccination, right? So that's a kind of congratulatory message on the one side and a reminder on the other side. Then loss aversion. That loss aversion has to be leveraged, because I already told you the exemplary initiative of regarding road accident victim. Road accident victim was immediately taken to the hospital. The hospital was not supposed to be riddled with formalities regarding informing his relative, informing the police and all. Instead, the prime duty of the hospital was to save the life of the victim. Okay, that is a typical example of economic good behavior. And then distributing appreciation certificate to the helper who took the victim to the hospital is a classic example. So we have the final principle: make messages modeling. The messages should be self-explanatory. The message should be purposeful. The sheep ad scheme among the teenage girls. The very name itself, sheep ad scheme, right? That shows the necessity of making the girls of reproductive age to be hygiene, right? Then an annual award in the name of Dakshayani Velayan, first Dalit woman, for the empowerment of women. So that was purposefully made in a vernacular language. That scheme was purposefully made in a vernacular language. Just see the seventh principle: matching models. Other schemes, Kerala Sahyadram scheme, Sahaya Hastam, lending a helping hand. That is Sahaya Hastam. Vidya Jyoti scheme, Subiksha Keralam scheme, Snehapurvam scheme, or there are many such schemes. So they have been deliberately made vernacular because mainly because people are supposed to know, people should be able to educate themselves as to what these schemes are, what is the mission behind the schemes, like that. So what I would like to bring to your notice is that these are the 7 principles of behavioral nudging. And these 7, we have already explained, defined what is 7 principles, and we discussed the various contexts in which these principles were applied in Kerala context. Now, welfare choice. The avowed aim of the government was what? Egalitarianism or equalitarianism, couched in welfare perspective. There was continuous natural calamities. But somehow I would say that it was a kind of blessing in disguise for the government, because that was a grim reminder to the government to have a series of hassle-free welfare programs. And that can be couched in called as nudge agenda, right? Because government felt the imperative necessity of expediting these schemes in a highly efficacious, efficient, systematic manner. For this was the so-called flood was a kind of blessing in disguise. I don't say that this flood was, of course, a blessing. Instead, it was a blessing in disguise. Of course, it was a serious setback or a mishap on the part of upon the people and the government also. But that acted as a grim reminder to the government with regard to the burning necessity of proceeding with the schemes one after the other in an ineffable, unmistakable, systematic manner. And another most important thing, the LDF, the social security pension of the government. Compared to the, even though the pension amount compared to the opposition was a little lower, that was acknowledged by the people for the past 5 years. It was acknowledged by the people. So it's not the amount per se that's important, but whether the scheme is still in vogue, that's a question. Whether people can be the stakeholders, that's a question. Whether they are able to enjoy the juicy fruits of this social security pension uninterruptedly, that is a question. And that is the reply is a resounding yes. And that enabled the government to vote back to power for another 5 years, because people could repose faith in government, and hence they invested their mandate in government. And there was social security pension, welfare pension, the hike, there was a paltry hike of 100 only, but still it was uninterrupted, right? During the pandemic, even during the pandemic period, that instilled a kind of confidence and esteem of the poor people as well as the grey population, aged people, right? And it was people felt that they were entitled to have it. People felt that they were entitled to have access to social security pension. They were entitled to have this welfare pension. And of course, it is not at all a generosity. Of course, this is not at all a hand money being paid on charity by the people. It's not charity. Instead, it is entitlement, legal entitlement. And that is a proud feeling that people were having. And that, of course, had a very positive impact on the electoral mandate. So there was a kind of invisible social contract between the government and the people. And that social contract was executed. But if you just ask me what is a social contract, I'm not in a position to show you what it is instead, because it was invisible. An invisible, a spontaneously born social contract, mutual, amicable contract was executed between the government and the people to help the people, especially the pretty old. Now, so far, what we discussed so far is only a tip of the iceberg, right? Now, let us see whether the schemes, policies, programs unleashed and initiated by the government are impeccable or perfect to the core. I would say no. As I did tell you, so far what you have discussed is only a tip of the iceberg. Now let us see. It is not without challenges. It's not without issues. There are some issues. Let us see what are the issues. In spite of this comprehensive victory, the imminent issue that has been hunting and haunting the state is nothing but the fiscal issue, the financial stress and strain of the government of Kerala. We cannot have an easy escape out of this bizarre reality. The Reserve Bank of India, of course, it was a cautionary report. It was an apprehension, a cautionary report of Reserve Bank of India that the net interest payment of Kerala jacked up from 1661 crore to 18,434 crore in 2019-20. That again shot up to 19,850 crore in 2021. The outstanding debt of the Kerala, if you just have a cursory look at the very nature of the outstanding debt, we can know that it is dominated by market borrowings, and that reached a voluminous 75% of gross state domestic product. This, of course, this is not a rosy picture so far as the state of Kerala is concerned, because government cannot have money out of thin air, right? Government is supposed to pay social welfare, pension. Government, the avowed mission of the government is redistributive justice. We cannot have redistributive justice out of thin air, right? It's not a what till I dream. We have to have huge avalanche of what finance. Yeah, that money, that is the lifeblood. So where does the money come from? That's a question. So already we are in deep financial trouble, right? So we are having another issue of highest per capita public debt. If we collate or compare Kerala with other states, we are having a notorious track record of highest per capita public debt. So, what's the very nature of revenue expenditure? This sticky downward. Sticky downward. I mean, it's not supposed to come down over the years. Instead, it is on the upsurge every year, right? So that geometric increase in revenue expenditure, that what does it augur well so far as tiny state like Kerala is concerned. And we have KIFB, Kerala Infrastructure Investment Fund, and SPV, right? And it issues revenue bonds, general obligation bonds. And for the next 5 years, there have been works up to 60,000 crore. That is supposed to be finished within the next 3 years because government issued bonds. Apart from that, that is supposed to be repaid. Okay, so the government issues bonds today, it is supposed to repay it the next year. So issuing bond is a kind of what? It's a kind of debt inducement, right? It's a kind of debt multiplication, right? So this is something gruesome. This is something macabre. This is something deadly serious. So it's a kind of debt-induced spending. If you ask me whether is spending made, yes, of course, there is spending, but unfortunately, it is more debt-induced. Right? Borrowing from one pocket and spending with another hand. That's not. That doesn't augur well for a state because that's why Comptroller and Auditor General want the very nature of Kerala borrowing as, KIFB modeling as unconstitutional. Of course, that was a political hot potato. Maybe you must have read in the newspaper. It was a political hot potato that produced much din and noise in every nook and corner of Kerala politics. When Thomas Isaac came down heavily against the report of CAG, right? Because CAG says it is unconstitutional. This is something that we can't entertain. That is what Thomas Isaac pointed out. So that produced much pandemonium almost everywhere. But the reality, the stark reality still is groping in the air. That reality is still in the air. That we cannot have an easy escape. And now let us come to the case of demographic scenario of the state. Compared to all other states, after all, the whole world, is becoming older and older, right? And the whole world in general, and Kerala in particular, So, social security for senior citizen is an issue. And this, I would say that this kind of social security is mindless. I have deliberately used this word mindless because this is having a behavioral cost. Because we are not supposed to provide everything free. The very fashion of providing everything free has to be reversed because that will only help people lazy. That will only help people sluggish. That will only help people leisure-prone. The best example we have Finland. Finland was the happiest country in the world. There was a kind of providing everything free to people in Finland, but that did not produce any use at all. So to conclude, we may say that there was a catchword, yes, for sure it is LDF, that engraved in the minds of Kerala. We have educated citizenry and excellent infrastructure. That was the bedrock of a successful Dutch policy. Amartya Sen told, honest governments were always prepared for a good regulatory system. And what Amartya Sen told, Kerala is a typical testament, typical example for this. Esther Duflo, Nobel Prize winner, along with Abhijit Banerjee. She told government should frame regulations and policies, and there is a mutual trust between the government and economics and the policy makers. This was Esther Duflo pointed out. But I would like to bring to your notice is that all these were having an application in Kerala. Kerala is a fitting testament to what Amartya Sen had told, what Esther Duflo had told. Okay. We have both political and welfare advantage. Out of it, the political advantage is that the same government was been able to power for another 5 years, and the welfare advantage is that there is a redistributive justice and economic freedom. So Kerala is once again invested their mandate and reposed faith in the left democratic front. At the same time, I would say that we are not supposed to be carried away by we are not supposed to be blind by the victory. Instead, we should give a second thought on the free behavioral traits, because we do not have, Kerala doesn't have a fiscal sustainability. So as long as our fiscal sustainable, as long as we are not fiscally sustainable, the policy of providing everything free with the help of social security, pension and all will not always hold good. That's what is I'm telling. So Kerala must take hasty and proactive steps to boost its revenue, to cope with its social security initiatives. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sujathan sir, for your lucid presentation. I actually enjoyed as a political science student, but of course, I have a lot of questions and reservations on that. I reserve all these questions for an offline chat. I reserve all these questions, personal questions to you on this. But some of the theoretical issues, I think it will probably surface in the coming days with respect to nudging theory. In political science or in other social science. One of the things is that if nudging theory can eclipse the kind of rationality in a big way, how far it challenges the concept of rationality, that's one point. Number two, as Gramsci pointed out, whether the nudging tool can be used as a tool to make a consensual government rather than a coercive government. In that way, what Noam Chomsky said, a manufacturing consent is possible through relying on this nudging policy. So artificially nudging policy can be created. The impression that the government is making the policies for the poor, for the masses, but in fact the government may not be that much paternalistic but more libertarian in nature. Not libertarian, liberal in nature. Liberal in the nature means the state is moving towards the interest of the corporate. While the state is moving towards the corporate, the state presumed to be paternalistic in that sense. So these terms will conflict each other, libertarian and paternalism, anti-liberalism. So all these theoretical questions are there, but I am leaving all these theoretical questions here. We will have a discussion on this later. And now I invite the students, scholars, faculty members from different institutions to come and make your comments on this presentation and his argument. I think we will have 15 minutes for discussion so that everything will be over by 10:40. So please try to be precise and brief as much.
Morning, sir. Can I ask?
Tell me.
Sir, I have a question for Sujathan sir as well as Arun sir.
Could you please
can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, but could you please introduce your name and institution you are coming?
I am Ananda Ratnanaban, a research scholar at MG College.
Please go ahead.
Sir, Sujathan sir, do you think your own behavioral biases and cognitive limitations could have influenced you while choosing these nudges? Because and also were you able to delimitate them? I have the same question to Arun Kumar sir also. Behavioral bias and cognitive limitations of journalists while reporting about people's behavior. Is it a problem for journalists? Sujathan sir, you can say your opinion first.
I shall answer at the end after receiving the queries, one by one. Is that good, Arun sir? Let me hear what people, have to-
Yeah, of course, that will be good. And I will just remind you the questions.
Because I'm
Fine.
noting down all queries and I should respond at the end. I think that will be deemed desirable. What do you feel?
Yeah, fine. We will collect all the questions and we will answer it. Okay, fine. Okay, but to my question, normally the chair is not attacked by the mob, but even then, I am very pleased to respond to Ananda Patnaphan. In a single sentence, I will tell you, journalists are cognitively biased. As everybody is cognitively biased, they are cognitively biased. We call this as political bias in a way. Of course, they have limitations. They have cognitive limitations. We don't think that there is a public sphere working in the media. I think better you read Habermas' concept of public sphere, where a critical rationality works. That is the theory of communicative action, and I think that will give you a proper understanding on the decline of the public sphere as far as media is concerned. I recommend you to read this. Okay, fine. We will move to the
Thank you, sir.
questions. Yeah. We have few questions in the chat box as well. Yes, please. You can use both chat box and you can ask questions directly.
Yeah. Any more questions? Otherwise, we can go to the chat box. Yeah, there is a question.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Jency Teresa of St. Joseph's College from the Department of Commerce. So my question is like a lot of young people are leaving our state or maybe our country. So there is a brain drain happening in our state. So as you have rightly pointed out, the interest rates are going up and our state is a debt-laden state also. So how well you can use this nudging? How the government can apply nudging in this respect? What is your perspective?
I think we can go to the chat box since there are no more response. Sujathan sir, you can begin with Ananda Patnaphan and the chat box questions are there. The cognitive limitations part. And the second one is that of Madam Jessie Teresa.
Jency Teresa.
Yeah, Jency. Fine. You start with the cognitive limitations. Sujathan sir, can you hear me?
Yeah. Should I respond?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So let's begin with what Arun sir pointed out regarding the how nudging challenges rationality and all such things. So let me tell you, sir. Actually, this principle of rationality and principle of nudging are antithetical to each other. And the very fact that Richard Thaler came to know about the very contradictory nature of nudging vis-a-vis rationality brought him a Nobel laureate, brought him this name and fame in the form of Nobel Prize. So the very first paragraph of my article, I did mention that in 2017 was awarded Nobel Prize. Almost in the same year and the next year, the whole world was riddled with financial crisis. And I would say that these were not what concomitant issues. They were not concomitant exercises because the world was going haywire. The world was on the whole economic world was on the brink of collapse just because of what I've told you that by applying rationality theory, model building like that. It was at this juncture that Thaler's theory of nudging came to the core and exposed the danger lurking behind model building, exposed to the danger lurking behind rational theory. And the moment Thaler, in his very famous book, explained the concept of nudging and elucidated the principles, how it can have the easy implementation at the hands of the government for among the people. Of course, that brought about the handicap of rational theory, and of course, that his nudge theory put the man at the pedestal in the sense that he or she is a social animal, and he or she is not always a calculating machine. That is a major defect of rationality theory. So Thaler was able to influence and convince the world regarding the shortcoming of rationality theory and convince us that the theory of nudging will always have practical implementations and practical applications. Apart from the political economy perspective, in his book, he pointed out a classic example that's very funny also, a fly in the urinal. Maybe you must have heard about it. I think one speaker last day spoke about it, fly in the urinal concept. He beautifully explained it. Fly in the urinal concept, according to Thaler, is that actually there were issues of pollution in the urinal of Amsterdam airport of Netherlands, right? And what Thaler told is that the toilet of the Amsterdam airport was very much unhygienic, was very much insanitary. So he told that when there were pictures of flies hovering around the toilet, and the pictures were deliberately posted inside the toilet. The pictures of flies were deliberately posted inside the toilet. Those who used the toilet had a feeling of cleaning the toilet after the use. Of course, those who used the toilet were not punished just because they did not clean it. Instead, by putting the picture of flies inside the toilet, a kind of feeling was spontaneously nudged among the users that they were supposed to flush the toilet soon after the use. That is a very classic example of nudging. And that, of course, that fly in the urinal concept indirectly attacks the rationality theory. Hope you got my point, Arun sir.
Yeah, Sujathan sir, you can go to some other questions as well.
Yeah.
Cognitive limitation.
Of Dr. Arun Kumar. Then comes Anantapatmanabhan told about whether I do have any personal bias. Of course, being a citizen and what are also influenced by this nudging technique of the government, because I've told you, I'm a social animal. I'm not supposed to think and act rationally. Actually, I'm influenced by the nudging policy of the government. So personally speaking, I do have behavioral bias, and no doubt I also fell an easy victim to this nudging technique of the government. But the difference that I would like to bring to your notice is that the people at large did not feel that they were being nudged, right? Instead, they were the stakeholders of the nudging technique implemented by the government. Naturally, they reposed their faith. Naturally, they invested their mandate in government. That's why the same government was able to be back to power for another span of 5 years. Not because people were acutely aware that they were being nudged, but government knew pretty well, in tune with the policy makers, in tune with the administrators, that they deliberately put nudge agenda in the policy toolbox of government. Of course, we all seriously presume that government was helped by Kerala State Planning Board, government was helped by the former economic advisor to our Chief Minister Geeta Gopinath, like that. I have no other go to think otherwise, right? So I personally feel that I am biased regarding this study. Thank you, Dr. Then Dr. Jensen, how fiscal strain will help good implementation of it. Of course, that is a grim concern, madam. That's why I've told you, government is supposed to be carried away by the electoral victory just because it was able to apply nudge technique, or by virtue of nudge technique, it was able to be back to power for or at the pinnacle of power for under 5 years. Government should definitely give a second thought on its free behavioral trade, because government is on the brink of what's financial stress and strain. So if the government is so particular that it should get on with its nudge agenda. Definitely, government should take honest and proactive steps to minimize the profligacy and maximize the revenue. Otherwise, we seriously apprehend that this nudge technique in the long run might become a failure. That's what is I concluded. Government should give much thrust on its fiscal scenario because it is highly dangerous. Government should take very serious measures to augment its revenue. Otherwise, things would shift from bad to worse. Any other query, Dr. Arun sir?
Yeah, Sujathan sir, there are a few queries in the chat box as well.
Okay.
One question is with
Surya will
respect to.
read the queries.
Yeah,
Surya will
please.
read.
Sure, sir. Sure, sir. So the first query is from Krishna, and it is like that. India is a democratic country, and now people like Prashant Kumar's idea helps Modi ji and Mamta ji to come forward to take charge of country and states again and again. I felt a nudging element, including in election, is against the democracy. What do you think about this?
I think he mentioned Prashant Kishore, I think.
Yes, sir. One more.
Sir, myself is Prashant. I have also raised a query.
Yeah, I will read. I will read. This is from Prashant. Good morning, sir. I am Prashant P, PhD, student of Chinmaya Vishwa Vidyapeeth University. So my queries while analyzing nudge theory with respect to another theory of behavioral finance, prospect theory of Daniel Kahneman, potential loss is asymmetrical to potential gain. Pain while loss is more as compared to happiness in gain. Thus, nudging while preventing loss will be more useful with respect to nudging which causing gain. Thus, I feel our government should nudge loss by suicides. And one more, as suicide rate of Kerala is escalating, and as per NCRB record, ADSI of 2020, Kerala suffered 8,500 suicide victims, which is loss of lives. That is 48 times that of Mumbai terror attack loss, 175 loss of life during 25 to 11.
I think Sujathan
Can
sir
I add
can
up
come
on one
and.
more thing?
I think we will, Sujathan sir can come and answer these two questions first.
Of course, nudging is not at all
Sir.
against democracy because
Am I audible, sir?
Prashant, could you please hold? Sujathan sir will give you
Sure,
answers
sure.
to the two questions, and then if time permits, I will.
Yeah, okay.
no, of course, I would say that nudging is not at all against democracy, provided the government is able to employ nudging as a trump card successfully and in favor of the people. Because we have the very live example of the government that is able to be back to the zenith of power from the span of 5 years, mainly because government employed nudging technique judiciously in a democratic setup. So you are right, because Thaler pointed out there are both evil nudging and good nudging. According to Thaler, evil nudging or bad nudging is more dangerous in government rather than in private sector. So your concern is very much genuine, dear, because here government of Kerala did not employ evil nudging, but it employed good nudging in a democratic setting. Just because of the fact that it employed good nudging in the form of egalitarianism or equalitarianism, in the form of redistributive justice that is couched in a political economy framework of nudging paradigm. And just because this proved to be a big success, government is able to be back to power. So democracy and nudging, of course, they are not at all antithetical. Regarding the question of suicide, I didn't get you, Arun sir. The audio was not at all visible.
It's a suggestive question whether the government should pursue a policy for nudging to prevent the loss by suicides.
Okay. So how it is possible to correlate the issue of suicide with nudging, right? So that is, of course, something that sparks interest in our minds, mainly because, the very success of the state of Kerala in having executed the nudging agenda is very much visible to us if we are just able to collate the state of Kerala with the other states. You know, the state of Kerala, so far as the suicide rate is concerned, it is far below or lower compared to the suicide of other states like Andhra Pradesh, Maharashtra, Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, and all. And even though I'm not in a position to employ the clear-cut evidence that it was mainly because of nudging that suicide rate has predominantly come down in Kerala, I would say that nudging is one of the prime reasons. It is one of the prime reasons, it is one of the strategic reasons on the part of the government. That's why Kerala does not have too much suicide compared to other states like Uttar Pradesh, Maharashtra, and all.
May I submit one thing, sir?
Pardon?
May I submit one thing, sir?
Yes,
Am I audible, sir?
if it is brief, if it's brief, you are permitted. Try to be brief.
Can I talk, sir?
Yes, Prashant, please.
Yes, yeah.
Sir, actually,
in a minute.
Oh?
Please conclude your query.
Briefly, I will say, sir. Yeah, sure, sir. Actually, the suicide rate as per NCRB records, sir, in Kerala, it is in 2018 it is 23.5, 2019 it is 24.3, and 2020 also it is increasing, and it is with respect to all India rate of 11, it is in approximately more than double. And our Kollam, out of the cities of India, Kollam should have the maximum of 44 out of 1 lakh. And why I was asking, sir, this nudging with respect to, if we compare with respect to prospect theory, or potential loss curve, it is more with respect to compared to happiness curve. That is a concave, and this one is a convex structure. So, if we can prevent the loss by analyzing with the suicide, I am saying, because suicide, if we can go for some nudging activities to prevent the suicide, and moreover, suicide also while analyzing in 95 it was 21.3 with respect to our family problems, and in 2000 it is 24.1, and in 2020 it has reached up to 41.7 out of per lakh, sir. That's a percentage share of suicide. So if we can go ahead with a nudging so as to prevent this suicide, it will be better for the humanity as compared to Kerala state.
You are right. Government should fine-tune more policies and strategies and deposit them in its policy toolbox of nudging so as to address the issues that you have just raised. I agree with that. Clear. Because in Kerala, the suicide is increasingly becoming a mega or a social issue.
Yes, right.
The state of Kerala is upon what the explosion of a grey population also. Even though we have a systematic social security measures for the elderly, the happiness, as you have pointed out, the happiness, the mental well-being of the people are unfortunately on the decline. So I would say that even though as of now we do not have, I have no tailor-made, I do not have anything tailor-made to show to you that there is a particular instrument that comes under nudging that can be put in the policy toolbox. Even though I do not have anything to name it, but government can have a serious thought on what you have just pointed out, and government must be able to rationalize the instruments that have been put in the policy toolbox of nudging to address the issues that you have just raised. Of course, that is
very true, sir.
Burning issue. I admit.
Very correct, sir. And Arun sir, being a media person, you can look into, sir.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. But unfortunately, as Stalin pointed out, we are yet to find out the reason behind suicide, because the reasons are many. There is no single reason.
Sir, that is what I said, sir. A reason of family issue, we need to look into.
It can be, it's a domestic, because the state is prevented.
And with respect to this
domestic spaces as well, because of many things. Even the dowry system intact, we know what happened to Vismaya story, everything. Okay, fine. We admit and we appreciate the queries and the comments so well, and I think it's the time to conclude the session.
Okay, sir.
to put again
Definitely we will discuss, sir. Okay, thank you.
Definitely. To put Richard Thaler back into the discussion, I will just, I am very pleased to wind up this by simply telling you, putting the kit at eye level may not work sometimes. If on the ground you are having different other strains as well. That means nudging has a potential, I fear, as a political science student, to be a propaganda if nudging is done without any substance, without the real intention to serve the people. That is how we qualify a state. So nudging can be a propaganda sometimes if they are used in policies without substance, without a substantial interest to move the mass. That is one point. Second thing, to wind it up so lightly, I know this nudging theory has been practiced by the lovers as far as romance is concerned most of the time. So it is easier for you to love, to keep your love on track if you nudge more, if you positively reinforce rather than negatively sanction something. So nudge with, or putting the chocolate at eye level counts, and banning what do you call a toxic kind of relationship or possessiveness, or too much possessiveness as far as romance is concerned. You can apply nudging theory in romance as well. Had it been there, Chengambura would have written something different as far as Ramanan is concerned. When the Ramanan's lover asked for going to the forest, Ramanan could have responded in a nudging way. That means I will give you, but there are these are the things here, and why should you come to forest, everything. Anyway, nudging theory is having a huge potential that we understand in the coming sessions as well. I think the department will deliberate this very seriously. Thank you, Sujathan sir, for the lucid presentation once again, and I congratulate you and your team for your wonderful articulation of nudging theory vis-a-vis Kerala Electoral verdict in 2021 in the Wiley journal as well. And thanks, Commerce Department, and particularly Dr. Biju, once again for giving me such a wonderful opportunity. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Dr. Sujathan and Dr. Arun Kumar, for the great discussion we had. Yesterday, the economic survey focused on the last 2019 economic survey focused on this, pinpointed the people are treated as Homo sapiens rather than the Homo economicus. So that was yesterday we had discussion on this positive and negative aspect of nudges, black nudges, sludges. So there are nudges which was successful. There are nudges which was utter flop. So today, I think these two speakers helped us to popularize this concept of nudges across the state. I think this was a discussion which was expected, more than expected. I would say that it was a great discussion on nudges, and I think the students and scholars had got a proper conceptualization on nudges after this discussion, because it was completely dedicated, completely connected with the political nudges. I would like to, I'm thankful to both speakers, Dr. Sujathan and Dr. Arun Kumar, for the wonderful session. So over to you, Surya, for the final remarks, conclusion. So Simon sir is also there. Simon sir wanted to speak something. Our head is also there in the meeting.
So thank you, Dr. Biju, Dr. Arun Kumar sir, and other team for making it as a colossal success. I also thank the participants for making this session vibrant. My special thanks to my co-authors, Dr. Prasad, Dr. Azad, and Dr. Jinswaki. Without whose contribution, this paper would not have been made a reality. Thank you very much.
Over to you, Surya. Simon sir, I think
Okay,
he's
sir.
busy with some.
Okay, sir. So this was truly an insightful and informative session for all of us. On behalf of Department of Commerce, University of Kerala, I extend our deep sense of appreciation to Dr. Sujathan for sharing his knowledge and thoughts on behavioral nudges for public policies in India. I also extend my sincere thanks to Dr. Arun Kumar for being a great moderator for the session. It was a really great moderation, sir, and the session was live too. Thank you so much, sir. Also, I would like to thank all the participants for your keen and active participation. We expect the same participation in the coming sessions also. With this, we have reached at the end of the third and final technical session of International Conference on Behavioral Nudges for Public Policies in India, Opportunities and Criticism, organized by Department of Commerce, University of Kerala.